I have removed the front bumper from my Volvo as it's in need of a full repaint. Over time, it has accumulated quite a few scratches and several small dents scattered across its surface. The front grille assembly is another component that also requires some careful welding work. Upon closer inspection, we can see that several significant cracks have appeared, and unfortunately, some of the delicate plastic parts are completely broken. So, the entire piece will need to be meticulously restored back to its original condition. I also removed the left and right front fenders. As you can see, they are rusted and in poor condition. I decided not to restore these fenders and bought new ones instead. Before painting the bumper, it was sanded with 240 grit sandpaper to ensure the primer would adhere properly. On the areas that were sanded down to the bare plastic, I applied a primer specifically for plastic parts, so that the next layer of paint wouldn't peel off, making sure to degrease the surface beforehand. The new fenders were sanded with 240 grit sandpaper before applying the primer. Before applying the paint, I also degreased the surface with anti-silicone. Since the original primer coating on the new fenders is very thin, I painted them with 3 layers of epoxy primer to protect them from rusting too quickly during use. After the primer had completely dried, I sanded it with 180 and 240 grit sandpaper. Next, I carefully sanded the surface using 320 grit sandpaper. Before starting, I first applied sanding powder to help control the process and to clearly see the areas that had been sanded. Before applying the base coat, in some places I had sanded down to the metal. There, I applied epoxy primer from a spray can. When the paint dried, the surface was degreased again and the first layer of base coat was applied. The initial result after applying the first layer of the base coat turned out to be generally okay, but the problem was that in a few specific places where I had sprayed epoxy primer from an aerosol can for touch-ups, the paint unfortunately started to lift. First, I will need to wait for the paint to completely dry, and after that, I'll carefully sand down any areas with noticeable defects. Then, I will be ready to paint the next layer using both a base coat and a protective lacquer.